Happy birthday, Jillian! I decided to read you an extra chapter just for your birthday. Happy birthday, kiddo. I can't believe you're 8. What? Alright, chapter 9. The flight back to the castle was nothing like our trip to the island. After I told the carpet home, it rotated until it faced the right direction and then took off at a smooth and steady pace into the darkening sky. Edric and I were tense at first, waiting for the ride to become bumpy or the carpet to go suddenly limp. When the flight remained uneventful, we both began to relax. "You didn't ask me if I wanted to go," said Edric, "but I really wanted to help you find those things for Christina. She helped us break the spell and gave me back my life. I owe her, so I'm honor-bound to do whatever it takes to get her and Haywood together again. Anything less would be unworthy of a prince." "I don't see how— Anyway, I've been thinking about the things we have to find. Christina said her friend will help us find gossamer hair. And I've even heard about magic beans, so they can't be that hard to get. The feather of an aged horse might be tricky, but I've never seen a horse with feathers, so I don't know how we'll handle that one at all. Your aunt will probably know what to do when she comes home. We were wrong about the dragons, though. This isn't going to be quick and easy as you seem to think." "The breath of a dragon green?" Edric shook his head. "It's too bad we don't have the vial I lugged around when I was a frog. That dragon's breath had lots of colors in it, and one of them had to have been green. You don't suppose we could just go to the swamp fairy and ask if we can have it back?" "Even if we could find that fairy, and even if she agreed to give it back, there's no guarantee that the dragon who breathed into that vial was green. Breath of a dragon green isn't the same as green breath of a dragon. I think we're going to have to find a green dragon and get its breath somehow." "I've had a few run-ins with dragons," said Edric, "and they all have nasty tempers. Even when we find one, we can't just ask it to breathe into a vial. I'm going to need a new sword. I lost my old one in the swamp when that witch turned me into a frog. All I've got now is my dagger, and that's not nearly enough if I'm going to face a dragon. I've been thinking about that too. Killing a dragon isn't so hard, but collecting its breath while it's still alive—" Edric tapped his chin. "I suppose I could do it if the beast was asleep." "Then that's our solution. I'll have a sleeping spell ready, and—" Edric scowled. "I thought we'd get a sleeping potion." "What would you do? Toss the dragon meat laced with your potion and hope it eats the meat before it eats you?" "I'd sooner do that than depend on your magic," Edric said. "For all I know, you'd put us to sleep instead of the dragon." "I'll have you know that my magic is getting better." "Oh, really? You already turned me into an old man with your magic, remember? I'll take my chances with a potion, if you don't mind. I'd rather you didn't come up with any more spells for a while. I think we'd both be better off without them." "I didn't know that you felt that way." "I didn't know you could be so stubborn." Edric was right in a way. My magic wasn't very good yet, and it did complicate things. I didn't seem to be having any problems with the spells that I read, only the ones that I came up with myself. Christina had told me to keep working on my magic, and maybe I should have just concentrated on learning established spells. I seemed to have a good memory for spells, even though I'd never been very adept at remembering other things, like social cues my mother always wanted me to learn. The rest of the trip was spent in cold, miserable silence. I dozed off for a time, coming fully awake as dawn was breaking behind the purple mountains. Although they were shrouded in mist, they were a lovely and welcome sight. Edric woke when the carpet entered the tower window. The funny popping sound it made when the window widened was loud enough to wake up the ghosts in the dungeon. The straps came undone as soon as we landed, slipping off us like an insult off an ogre. It felt good to have solid footing again, and I bent and stretched, trying to work out all the kinks in my legs and back. Still refusing to talk to me, Edric headed straight for the castle kitchen, but I wanted to say hello to Lil first. I found her in the storage room hanging from a rafter. "So there you are," she said, sounding delighted to see me. "I heard you come in. Quick, tell me everything that happened." I did, and I finished with the list of items we needed to transform Haywood. As it was Wednesday morning, we didn't have much time, so we'd have to go see Christina's friend Coral as soon as we could. And Christina said I should find a gift for the sea witch. Do you have any ideas? Lil tilted her head and looked thoughtful. "I'd be happy to help, but I'd need time to think. Why don't you go get something to eat before you scare everybody in the castle? Your stomach sounds like a dragon having a bad dream." As I was leaving Christina's apartment, I nearly ran into Edric. He was juggling a towering platter heaped high with cold roast duck, boiled partridge eggs, thick slices of dark bread, and chunks of yellow cheese. "Hey," he said, "what's the hurry?" "I was heading to the kitchen." He looked at his pile of food. "Good. So get me a couple more—" Someone must have opened the door at the bottom of the steps, because suddenly the stairwell was flooded with noise. Because of the way the castle was constructed, anyone standing on the stairs could hear even the faintest sounds in the great hall when the connecting door was open. It sounded as though a large crowd had gathered and everyone was talking at once. Since one of the distinctive voices was my mother, I knew I probably couldn't avoid running into her if I went to the kitchen. I took my time going down the stairs while I thought about what to say, scarcely noticing Edric as he continued the list of food that he wanted me to bring to him. Reaching the bottom of the steps, I saw that the great hall was bustling with servants, soldiers, and couriers. When I stepped into the room, I spotted my mother speaking with the castle steward. A short distance away, my father stood listening to the captain of the guard, who excused himself when he noticed me approaching. "Father," I said, pleased to see him. I would have liked it if he opened his arms to me for a hug, but that was not how he was. Skirting a trio of ladies-in-waiting, I bobbed my head to my mother, then hurried past her to my father's side. His smile was genuine, but the circles under his eyes and the weary stoop of his shoulders concerned me. My father was tall, with broad shoulders and blond hair turning slightly into gray. A strong man, he feared very little, so when I saw him looking worried, I was worried as well. "Your mother told me what happened to you," he said. "You must learn to be more careful." "Of course, father." I decided to postpone telling him about my latest adventures. "Where is Gracina?" my mother asked, coming up behind me. "I have to speak to her right away. Is she still upstairs?" Mother glanced toward the stairwell as if expecting my aunt to come down at any moment. I shook my head. "She's not here. It was awful. When we asked Grandmother to help us, she refused and then banished Haywood into the wilderness. Gracina's gone to look for him. She said you shouldn't worry." Mother looked upset. "Of course I'll worry. Everything has gone wrong since she left. Limeland, tell Emeralda about the spies." The creases in my father's brow deepened. "All we learned was that King Beltran has sent them to watch our family." "Isn't King Beltran Prince Jorge's father?" I asked. "Yes, unfortunately," said my mother. "I thought if we made an alliance between our two countries, Beltran would leave us alone. He's coveted our western land for years. Your Aunt Christina's reputation for magic is the only reason he hasn't tried to take it by force." My father nodded. "As we discovered Beltran's spies, I sent my own into his kingdom. I've just received their report. Jorge learned about your disappearance and thought you would run away so you wouldn't have to marry him. When you returned with Prince Edric, Jorge was convinced he was right and swears he no longer wants to marry you. Despite his son's wishes, Beltran plans to force the wedding. He's telling everyone that you and Jorge were officially betrothed and you signed all the documents. I'm to give him half of my western lands as your dowry." "But that's ridiculous!" I exclaimed. "I had never signed any documents, and there was no betrothal ceremony, and to demand that you give up land—" "That's really all he wants. The rest is just an excuse," Mother said through clenched teeth. "I wouldn't let you marry that horrible man's son now for all the dust in East Aridia. Beltran knows that the only way he'd get our land is through force. He's called his men to arms," Father continued. "His spies have told him that Gracina is away, so he may well believe he has the opening that he needs." "This is the worst possible time for her to be running around in the wilderness," said my mother. "Greater Greensward has been at peace for centuries, although that could change if your aunt isn't here to use her magic. War can do a horrible thing to a kingdom." I was very confused. How could Beltran's spies have told him about Gracina so quickly? She's only been gone a day. "From the way they escaped, we think that at least one of the spies was a wizard," said my father. "They turned into birds and flew away." My mother frowned. "That's why we need your aunt here now. Your father is perfectly capable of dealing with any ordinary army. However, if Beltran has magic at his disposal, we need magic of our own." "What can I do?" "There really isn't anything," Mother started. "Please, Mother, there must be some way I can help. You've always said that I should take more interest in my duties as a princess." "Very well then, see if you can get Gracina home and focused on her work. She can't waste any more time on Haywood when she has a job to do here." "I'll see what I can do. I already know what she needs to turn Haywood back. Edric and I are going to collect the items and—" "Is he still here?" said my mother. "Doesn't that boy have a home? It's bad enough that he ruined your reputation. Now we can't get rid of him? My steward has been complaining about him too. Seems your Prince Edric eats more than 3 nights." "He's already been a big help," I began. My mother laughed. "I can't imagine how. And I'll be able to help Gracina better if Edric is helping me." Mother sighed. "I suppose he can stay, but only as long as he's being helpful." "Has the young man given you indication regarding his intentions toward you?" asked my father. "He says he wants to marry me. I really hadn't wanted to tell my parents until I made up my mind, but I didn't want to lie about it either." Perhaps it's his sense of chivalry that's making him say that, said my mother. He must know that he's sullied your good name. I don't think that's it at all. I'm sure. My mother snorted, making the most unladylike sound. You can't believe that he offered because he has feelings for you, Emeralda. You're too willful to make a good wife, and you're neither dainty nor delicate as a princess should be. Heaven knows I've done what I could with you, but even I could only do so much. Since he's made an offer, however, my hard work must have had some effect. If I didn't do something to stop her, my mother would be making wedding plans before I was even engaged. I didn't accept his offer, I said. Mother gasped. What? I didn't realize you were this foolish. His offer may be the only one that you'll receive. I didn't turn Edric down, I just didn't say yes. I told him I'd think about it. My mother's face was turning red. This is preposterous. You should have jumped at the chance to. She caught herself, a slow smile softening her mouth. No, wait. Perhaps you're wiser than I realized. Sometimes playing hard to get. I wasn't playing hard to get. I just don't know if I want to marry him. And that's exactly why you need your father and me, young lady, said my mother. Without our guidance, you'd end up a pitiful old spinster like your Aunt Christina, and we would end up giving the country to relatives we don't even like. I bit back the angry reply that burned in my throat. My aunt was far from pitiful, and only a few years older than my mother. Trying to look meeker than I felt, I thanked my mother and father for their advice, hurried to the kitchen, collected a hunk of bread and some cheese, and left through the back door. Edric was still eating when I reached Christina's rooms. He smiled at me, and I could tell that having food had put him in a better mood, although he seemed a bit disappointed that I hadn't brought him back more. While he nibbled a piece of duck, I told him about King Beltran and how he wanted to force me to marry Jorge. Edric's eyebrows shot up. That's terrible, he said. He can't do that. You're going to marry me. Jorge no longer wants to marry me, but my parents said that his father wants our western lands. I'll tell your father that I'll fight at his side. I know we aren't officially betrothed, but they said that the best thing we can do is help Christina. They need her back here with her magic at full strength, and that means we have to do everything we can to help her take care of Haywood. Then that's what we'll do. But as soon as we're finished, I'm joining your father. I know he'd appreciate the help, I said. You two will probably get along well together. You both enjoy a lot of the same things. My mother's a different story, though. Unless she decides that she likes you, she can be very unpleasant. Then I'll just have to get her to like me, Edric said, popping another egg in his mouth with greasy fingers. I hope you have better luck than I have. Even though she's my mother, I don't think she ever really liked me. But you have one factor in your favor that I've never had. You're a boy. While Edric finished eating, I excused myself and went to the storage room to look for a gift for Coral. Lil was inside, perched on top of an old dusty trunk that reminded me of Olfat's, except this one was in much worse shape. Battered and dented, its surface was covered with grainy and badly pitted dark green leather. I couldn't understand why anyone would choose a hide of that type. What is this? I asked, running my hand over the uneven surface. I asked your aunt the same question, said Lil. She said it's the skin off of a troll's backside. Grimacing, I snatched my hand away and rubbed it on my skirt. It's supposed to be tough and last a long time. That's the trunk your grandmother gave Christina when the old woman retired. I thought we could look inside for a gift for the sea witch, but I have a few other things we could look at if there's nothing in there. Lift the lid and we'll take a peek. It's just too heavy for me. The little bat fluttered to the top of the magic mirror propped against the wall, leaving me standing by the trunk. Gritting my teeth, I grabbed the lid and shoved. It opened with the groan of ancient hinges, and I imagined that it was the voice of the long-dead troll. Kneeling on the floor, I reached through the shadowy recesses and began to take items out one at a time, while Lil named things that she recognized. A ridged tooth as long as my thumb dangled from a golden chain. Lil gasped, saying that it was from a manticore. The stiff gray hairs tied with silver thread were bundled werewolf whiskers. An ancient jar of yellow crusty flakes was a collection of goblin earwax. Another jar held jagged black crescents that Lil identified as nail clippings from an ogre. The little bat hissed when I held up a jar containing coarse, stringy hair caked with something brown and glossy. Shuddering, Lil told me that it was the hair from a harpy and could empty even the largest castle with its stench. I had to set the jar back in the trunk when Edric stepped into the room. Find anything yet? He asked. Nothing we'd want to give anyone. I closed the lid of the trunk before he could dig around inside. Lil, didn't you say there might have been some other things? There's a golden feather from a golden goose, but I didn't think you'd want to take that. It has golden bird lice on it, Lil said. They're a pretty color, but they do tickle. And that's it? I asked. There is something else in a little box behind the mirror, but I don't think you'll want that either. I found the box easily enough. When I opened the lid, there was only one thing inside, a silver hairpin with a ruby head shaped like a fish. What's wrong with it, Lil? Was it dipped in poison? Does it make the wearer sleep forever or turn her into a fish? What does it do? That's just it. It doesn't do anything. So why wouldn't I want to take it? Because it doesn't have anything magic. I thought you wanted something special, and that pin is boring. A fish-shaped ruby is perfect for a mermaid. Since she's a magical being, she probably has all sorts of magical things already. We'll take the pin. I'm sure she'll like it. The box was too big to fit in my pouch, so I took the pin out and pushed it through the fabric of my sleeve until I was sure it was secure. I had turned around to show Edric when I heard Lil exclaim, "What's that? Is it alive?" "What are you talking about?" I asked. "There in the back," Lil said, pointing at my gown with her wing. I grabbed the back of my skirt and pulled it around to get a better look. I didn't see anything unusual until Edric reached down and plucked something from my hem. "Would you look at this?" he said, holding up a little green crab identical to those we'd seen on the island. I bent down for a closer look. How did that get here? I'd thought the island crabs couldn't talk, so I was surprised when the little creature spoke. "I saw you change from a green hopping thing into a human," the crab said in a scratchy voice. "I wanted to see you do it again, so I could learn how to do it too. I've been holding on forever since you walked past. My claws are tired." "I can't show you how to turn into a human," I said. "I was human before I was a frog, and then I was just turning back. I've never heard of an animal turning into a human." "I have," said Lil, "but it hardly ever works out. Life as a human is too confusing, and the animal usually ends up just miserable." Edric waggled the crab, and its legs flapped. "What do you want to do with this thing, Emma? I think you should save it for Haywood. You know how much he likes to eat crabs." The crab's claws stiffened, and it twisted its eye stalks to look at me. "Is Haywood that fuzzy monster that was eating my friends?" I nodded. "He's an otter, so he likes to eat lots of things." "Please," said the crab, pulling his little legs in towards his body, "don't let the monster eat me. Surely I could come in handy someday." I hadn't liked watching Haywood eat the other crabs, and I already knew I didn't want him to eat this one, but I couldn't imagine what a crab could possibly do for me. "I swear you won't regret letting me go," said the crab, its eye stalks waving wildly around on top of its head. "Oh, really? And what am I supposed to do with you?" "I heard you talking about visiting a sea witch. You could take me with you." I sighed. "I'll see what I can do. What's your name?" "Shelton, which I think is a very good name for a crab. We pick our own names, you know, and I thought about it for a long time before I chose it. My brother's name was Crabicus, and I don't like that one nearly as well. One of my sisters has an even funnier name. It's Here," I said, handing the crab to Edric. "You hold him while I get the comb." Edric's jaw dropped open. "Hold him? Why don't I just chuck him out the window and he can go live in the moat? Last thing we need is a crab tagging along." "Be nice," I said. "You're supposed to be a prince and set an example." "But he's just and yesterday you were just a frog. Remember? A frog who had friends who were also frogs. Think of him as a very small subject and you might find being nice a little easier." Turning my back on Edric and the crab, I hurried into my aunt's bedchamber and knelt beside her silver chest. Banded with silver straps, it was smaller and newer than the chest that held her clothes. I opened the lid and found the comb resting on top of creamy fabric embroidered with dragons. Shaped like a seashell, the silver comb was embedded with little pink pieces of coral. It was lovely, although it looked very fragile. With the comb in my hand, I said bye to Lil and joined Edric by the saltwater bowl. Although I'd sometimes seen schools of miniature fish swimming back and forth in the bowl, the water now appeared empty except for the tiny castle. Perfect in every detail, the castle had 2 turrets and a few dozen windows, but as far as I could see, it only had one door, which appeared to be less than an inch high. Crazy, crazy! Happy birthday, friend!